Section 1. The most consistently right person in Fromville. Kenny Liu has been in Fromville longer than most. He arrived with his parents when his father's dementia took him to the wrong bus, on the wrong road, at the wrong time. He became Boyd's deputy because Boyd recognized something in him early, a quality that Fromville has been working on ever since. He's the most consistently right person in Fromville, and it has cost him almost everything. Before Boyd left for the forest, Kenny told him something the town had been carefully preventing anyone from saying out loud. The talismans are a band-aid. The temporary reprieve was becoming permanent resignation. The people had stopped fighting to go home because the nights had become survivable. Kenny saw this clearly and said it to Boyd's face, and Boyd left the next morning. When Sarah was found in the church basement, Kenny insisted she go in the box. He was wrong about Sarah ultimately, but he was right about the rules. Boyd had built a community on the principle that the rules applied to everyone, and Kenny understood that breaking them for Sarah, regardless of what she knew, would hollow out the authority the whole system depended on. He handed back his badge and walked away, rather than pretend the exception made sense. Later, he recognized Boyd's deterioration before anyone else was willing to name it. He barred the doors. He asked the questions. He tried to contain what was happening to the man the town had been quietly converting since the beginning. Every time Kenny was right, the town removed something he loved. His father, his mother, the straightforward version of his relationship with Christy, his uncomplicated faith in Boyd. The town has not been punishing Kenny for being wrong. It has been punishing him for seeing clearly. Section 2. What clarity costs in Fromville. The town runs on managed perception. Hope and despair calibrated carefully enough that the survivors stay functional but never find the exit. The gyroscope requires people to believe that tomorrow might be different, and equally, that yesterday's losses were random rather than designed. Kenny's clarity cuts across both of those requirements. He understood the chess metaphor before anyone articulated the town's mechanics. Standing in the forest with the bloody chess piece, he told Boyd that the creatures always walk and never run, because they know there are only so many places the people can go. They're running out of space on the board. Kenny was describing the town as a closing system while everyone else was still processing the shock of arrival. He understood grief before the town could weaponize it. When his father died, he didn't collapse into the town's management cycle. He went into the forest and started chopping wood for a chess set. Not denial, displacement into something productive. The town found another angle. His mother arrived in the same wave and the town kept her alive long enough for Kenny to build something worth losing. Tian Chen's death is the town's most precise strike against Kenny's clarity. His mother was the last uncomplicated relationship he had. Everyone else, Boyd, Christy, Sarah, existed in contested moral territory. Tian Chen was simply his mother who made him tea, who told him he worked too hard, who asked him if he had talked to Christy. When she was killed, the town didn't just take his last parent. It removed the one person whose presence required nothing from him, the one relationship the town had not yet converted into something complicated. After Tian Chen's death, Kenny moved to Colony House and gave away his house because it wasn't a home anymore. The town had finished with what it had built there. If Kenny's losses are starting to look less like bad luck and more like a systemic reduction of everything that made him effective, subscribe now, because what the town has been building in Kenny is not a broken man, and what comes next is what it has been building him toward. Section 3. The thread that holds. While Christy was breaking down at the prospect of everyone dying for nothing, Kenny told her something that reframed the entire situation. His father used to say that it's hard to see the sweater when you're only just a thread. Maybe they're not the ones who get to go home, but what they did in the township will make it easier for the next group. They will turn out to be the reason the next people go home. Just because they're a thread doesn't mean they don't matter. This is the most philosophically sophisticated thing anyone says in Fromville. Not Boyd's military stoicism, not Kotry's theological framework, not Jade's algorithmic analysis. Kenny Liu, at his lowest point, articulated a cosmological argument for why their suffering has value even if they never escape. The town could not use that against him in the moment, but it noted it. The thread metaphor is also the most accurate description of the town's mechanics that any survivor has offered. People in Fromville are not the main story. They're the material. Useful, processable, ultimately expendable material in a system that has been running far longer than any of them have been alive. Kenny understood this intuitively and chose meaning inside that framework rather than despair. That choice, to find meaning inside the impossibility rather than despite it, is what the town cannot afford. A survivor who accepts the system's terms and finds purpose within it anyway is harder to break than one who fights it or surrenders to it. Kenny did neither. He adapted without losing himself, and the town kept looking for the crack. Section 4. The Offer. When Ellis was dying and Boyd refused to give his blood for the transfusion, fearing the worms would transfer, Kenny pointed a gun at Boyd and tried to force him. When Boyd refused, Kenny made the offer himself. Transfer the worms to me, and we'll figure out the rest later. Boyd refused, but Kenny made the offer. This is the moment that defines everything about who Kenny is in Fromville. He was willing to take Boyd's contamination into his own body to save Ellis's life. He was willing to become whatever Boyd was becoming, the worms, the visions, the Archon transformation, so that Ellis would survive. The town didn't take him up on it, not then, but the offer was made, and the town heard it. A person willing to absorb corruption to protect others is a specific kind of useful. Later, Boyd goes upstairs to interrogate Elgin by any means necessary. Kenny is waiting at the door to dissuade him. Tells him they should talk to Elgin again. Boyd insists, saying it's the only way to find Fatima, and Kenny walks away, where he sits at the foot of the staircase while the screams come down through the ceiling. He doesn't stop it. He already understands the logic, that sometimes the protection of many requires the suffering of one. The town taught him that, through his father, through his mother, and through every impossible decision Boyd ever made that Kenny had to support in public while disagreeing in private. Kenny Liu arrived in Fromville as a deputy who did what the sheriff said. He will enter Season 4 as something different. A man who has absorbed enough of the town's darkness to understand its logic, and enough of his own clarity to still question it. That combination is either the most dangerous thing in Fromville, or the most useful. The town has been deciding which. Section 5. What the town has built. The Season 4 trailer shows Kenny with Sophia, the new arrival, the pastor's daughter whose very name signals the Gnostic framework the show has been building toward, has a direct connection to Boyd's deputy. The town does not make those connections randomly. Kenny has lost his father, his mother, his uncomplicated faith in Boyd, and the version of Christy that existed before Marielle walked off the bus. He has been systematically stripped of everything that kept him oriented toward home rather than function. What remains is someone who understands the town's mechanics as well as any survivor alive, who is offered to absorb its contamination on behalf of others, who can articulate the cosmological argument for why their suffering matters even if they never escape, who has been right about the town's direction at every significant turning point, and who has paid for that clarity with the people he loved the most. The question ahead is not whether Kenny survives. The town has kept him alive deliberately. The question is what it has been keeping him alive for. Boyd arrived as the man who would hold the community together and has been converted into something else entirely. If the town follows the same pattern with Kenny, taking the man whose clarity made him useful and converting that clarity into something that serves the system, then what comes next may be the moment Kenny Liu finally becomes what the town has been building since the night his father took the wrong bus. Whatever that is, the town has been patient about it, and in Fromville, patience is never accidental. Kenny offered to take Boyd's contamination into himself to save Ellis. Town said not yet. I want to know what you think the town has been saving Kenny for. Leave it below. I read every comment, and I will do my best to respond. Subscribe now. New season starts April 19th.